A very good morning. It's Cynthia Payne here. I'm the principal of Anchor Excellence. I've got the great pleasure of facilitating and supporting today's webinar, and we're with you for about the next hour. So a very warm welcome to our participants coming from all around Australia. And I'm really pleased to kick off by welcoming you to using business excellence in aged care. Why is now the right time? Anchor Excellence, we're consulting in the aged care sector at a board and a governance level. And for those of you who happen to know my background, I've also been a very strong advocate and user of the Australian Business Excellence Framework. In fact, it's our meta frame that we even use at Anchor Excellence, help putting in place excellence principles. And we've been long-term members of Business Excellence Australia. Now, today we've put together a really exciting panel, including our international speaker from the US, Paul, who's joining us in the evening in the US. So I'm going to introduce everybody. Just a reminder, we are using the Q&A function, and we will be making the webinar available from a recording perspective. So if you do have any technical issues, we'll be able to share this to you a little bit later. I'm going to start by introducing our speakers, but before I do that, I would like to start by acknowledging an acknowledgement of country. We'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation and the traditional custodians of the land, and pay our respects to elders, both past, present, and emerging. And we extend that respect for any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples who are joining us here today, wherever you may find yourself. Before we kick off with our first speaker, I would like to just start by introducing this fabulous group of people. Romy Baker is the CEO of Business Excellence Australia. Business Excellence Australia is a national membership-based organisation that is focused on the development and recognition of organisations in the pursuit of excellence. Romy herself personally is passionate about the principles and methodologies that can be used to achieve sustainable business improvement outcomes, and she has a particularly special interest in business compliance, and is an experienced evaluator with the ABEF, as we short term it, and the International Organisation for Standardisation, or ISO. Our second speaker, who'll be following Ravi, is a long-term colleague, Ravi Fernando. And Ravi, for many of you, if you've met Ravi before, would know he's the founder and director of Thrive 35, which is a consulting practice, again, Australian-based. Ravi is a leading specialist assisting organisations to improve through implementation and adoption of excellence models. So the ABEF, the Australian Business Model, as well as EFQM, improvement methodologies, including Lean, Six Sigma, PDSA, Balanced Scorecard, and systems thinking, and a range of tools, including ProMat, Ninetex, UiPath. And he, of course, leverages his very extensive background in management systems, operating model alignment, and process improvement, with the purpose of delivering rapid and sustainable results for his clients. Although his current focus remains on Australia, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily know that Ravi is a global ambassador for business excellence, and we're very pleased that he has participation in the Global Excellence Council, as well as the ASQ Organisational Excellence Technical Committee. Our third speaker and international speaker is Paul Grizel, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time explaining Paul's background. So Paul is the judge and examiner trainer for the American Healthcare Association National Centre for Assisted Living Quality Award Program, obviously in the US. He is a leadership coach who helps his clients focus, align, and accelerate their improvement efforts through effective deployment of the Baldrige criteria. Baldrige is the sister framework, or depending on how you frame it, for ABEF. Much of his work is focused on helping mission-focused organisations implement effective practices that lead to high performance and improve results. Paul has been a thought leader regarding performance excellence, and this is particularly important for our audience, Paul, in long-term care. And he's been a judge for the gold level award program for 10 years and trained senior and master examiners for the program. So you've obviously provided support with bronze, silver and gold application writing workshops. And obviously your background, Paul, as a master examiner has led to you visiting lots of interesting places and also being a support for regional quality awards programs. Interestingly, Paul is also the co-author with Mark Blasey of Insights to Performance Excellence using the Baldrige framework and other integrated management systems, which has been published by the American Society for Quality. So I'm very, very pleased you're with us today, Paul. And then our final speaker is Claire Pearson. Claire is the CEO of Little Wings. Now, Little Wings, you might not have heard of this organisation. It's based out of Sydney here at Bankstown Aerodrome. Claire is the CEO of this organisation, and it provides free air and ground transport for seriously ill children from regional and rural New South Wales, ultimately providing access to life-saving medical treatment via Sydney Children's Hospital Network and John Hunter Children's Hospital. And Claire, the fascinating thing about Claire's engagement is she's been using the ABEF as part of her journey with Little Wings. So we're really pleased to be here. With no further ado, Romy, I'm going to hand to you.
Have you handed over?
Yep, over to you.
Thank you, Cynthia, and good morning, everybody. And thank you for the introduction. I'm delighted this morning to be able to talk about Business Excellence Australia and how the system in the Australian Business Excellence Framework can make a huge difference to the delivery of any business, but particularly in aged care services. We are a not-for-profit organisation and whose sole purpose is to assist organisations to achieve their greatest potential. We've been around in various forms since 1987, so we're not new at all, we're well established. BEA is also the steward of the Australian Business Excellence Framework and associated awards process. And there are 4 levels of awards. There's the recognition, the bronze, the silver, the gold, and actually there's 5. And should you wish to go on after that, there's the prize. The beauty of the process is not to win the prize, but it's to do the process, because then you will automatically get an award because you're so good. The ABEF is an integrated leadership and management system that describes the essential elements for sustaining high-level performance levels. The ABEF is recognized globally and has been mentioned, and this includes many countries: Baldrige in America, the European Foundation for Quality Management in Europe, Dubai, India, and there are many others. The framework succinctly describes the principles and practices to create sustainable high-performing organizations. There are 9 principles, 7 categories with 16 subcategories that guide you step by step on how to understand and organize the work into achievable components. Thank you. Performance excellence really, if I just slipped a slide, high-performing organizations that can prove they're the best in their field, retain their current business, but more importantly, they attract more business. They deserve to be recognized by all your stakeholders, the relatives and clients who are looking for somewhere special to be cared for. And also your competitors take note. BEA is the custodian of the awards, which demonstrates that the winners have proven their excellence in their field of business and are recognised. It's very important, that word recognised. It's a journey towards the excellence that is the value, not the award itself. As you go along the journey, you'll learn a lot about yourselves, your organisation, and each other. And this results in progressive and sustainable results. Today, the context of business often just means finance, but that's not so. For you guys, it means the healthcare services that you provide. That's your business in every sense of the word. Thank you. Performance excellence needs strong leadership. This is proven by achieving outstanding results. The focus is on integrated because every part of the organisation is interrelated, and every part of the 7 categories and 16 subcategories are interrelated. And that's what makes it so valuable. People often just look at one part of an organisation and don't realise it has an impact on many others. The BEA evaluation process, if you enter into an award, is not an audit. Our business excellence evaluators review an organisation to identify the key strengths and offer suggestions for key improvements. Our evaluators are all volunteers. They're highly experienced people who've been through this process, who understand the framework and are passionate about assisting organisations to be the best that they can be. One of the gold things about this is the feedback report, which is provided so that an organisation has a documented reference to use to make the improvements that have been identified. The independent feedback report addresses each item in the categories and the subcategories, and this makes it an invaluable tool for improvement. Compliance standards have to be prescriptive, but a BEA evaluation looks for your strengths. And Ravi will give you a presentation, will show you some of the practical aspects of using the BEA.
Thank you so much, Romy. And that's a fabulous backdrop to really understanding the role of Business Excellence Australia and what's involved. And so very pleased to hand over to you now, Ravi. We haven't got any sound for you, Ravi, at the moment.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Beautiful. So apologies to start with. This is kind of business excellence in action, if you like. Right on 11 a.m., my Zoom on my computer failed. So thankfully, I had a backup in place. So I am joining on my mobile.
It's agility in action, Ravi. Agility in action.
Exactly. Exactly. So that one of the core principles of excellence is be prepared for contingency. So Romy provided an excellent introduction of business excellence framework and the purpose of Business Excellence Australia. I am one of the directors of Business Excellence Australia, and I'm speaking in that capacity. What you see on this slide is the framework itself that Romy referred to. And what the framework does is it provides any organization, irrespective of which sector, which size it has, with some key things to think about in becoming a high-performing organization. And high performance ultimately means that any organization can address the requirements and the wants of many stakeholders that they have to deal with. And I think, as most of the audience would well know, aged care is one of the most complex sectors around. There are so many stakeholders that aged care organizations need to cater for and address and improve some very key outcomes. And our belief is that the business excellence framework is a really powerful enabler that will provide guidance to aged care organizations in achieving better and better customer outcomes. So, if you can, one of the most powerful aspects of the framework is a philosophy of continuous improvement. And that philosophy is embodied in the framework by a learning cycle that refers to, that's referred to as ADRI. And what it tells us, in everything we do, we need to always think about why we are doing it. We need to then go about putting in place what we had planned. We need to look at the results, see what we can learn from it, and change everything we do into the future to continuously improve on those outcomes to stakeholders. So the framework, the model we saw before, provides a range of considerations, things for us to think about, and then the framework also tells us that it's not enough to put that in place. We always need to do better and better. And again, I think we would be very experienced in knowing that people who rely on us, our customers, our stakeholders, always want something better. And, you know, as new ideas come through from the global ecosystem we work in, from our own residents, our own consumers, our own family members who come up with ideas on doing something better each time, we as organizations need to actually cater for that. And that's the expectation that is there among our stakeholders, but all by our regulators. So the framework at its heart is catered for helping organizations to think about the right things, prioritizing them, and making sure that we are doing things better and better. So it applies regardless of which sector you're in. It applies regardless of which size, which nature of organizations you have. So it applies, of course, to aged care sector, and that's why we are talking about, and we have experience, and Cynthia has a huge amount of personal experience in using the framework to achieve some amazing outcomes within aged care. And we've seen this put in place by many aged care organizations to achieve some very similar outcomes. So what I wanted to illustrate as well is that there is a very clear relationship with the business excellence framework and the standards, which are really at the heart of regulation for the aged care sector. I think the standards are often almost a burden for aged care operators, if I can say it like that, because of course it drives what we need to deliver, but it is also very complex to manage. And the framework creates an organization, a culture, a set of behaviors in leadership that help you to achieve the outcomes that are set out in the standard. So if you take it at a high level, I interpret some of the key elements of the standards as key outcomes that we need to deliver to our stakeholders. So consumer dignity, for example, that's an outcome that the quality standards tell us that we need to deliver on. It doesn't tell us how, though. It gives us a number of requirements to meet, but it doesn't really tell us how to go about it. What's going to help our organizations to drive that? And that's where the framework comes in. So the framework is an enabler of the requirements we have. Can move to the next slide, Cynthia. So this is just an illustration. It's a very small illustration. If we take one of the requirements in consumer dignity, as each consumer is treated with dignity and respect, with their identity, culture, and diversity value. That's the requirement that the standard has. Now, what does that mean? How do you enable that? There are a lot of things you need to think about. Remember those 7 categories in the framework? Each of those categories can play a part. So leadership can play a part by driving the right culture within the organization that makes sure that people actually treats consumers with dignity. Your people need to be educated and trained to actually deliver on this. So it's not just about providing care or providing nursing services. It's really about making sure that we can drive these outcomes, this dignity that consumers need to feel. Similarly, dignity means something different for each individual. So you need to understand what dignity means for each individual you're caring for. So all of those concepts are part of the framework. As I said, they apply for any organization, but in aged care, if you apply some of those principles of the framework, if you're trying to drive that improvement through, without any further effort, you're going to achieve the requirements of the standard. And that's the beauty of the framework. It's common sense, it's good practices, but it will help you to achieve and exceed in many ways the requirements of the standard and of the many other regulations you as a sector needs to meet. And that's why we are very passionate believers that the framework can embody how the sector can actually deliver better and better outcomes without needing to twist itself into knots in thinking about how to meet these. It's about having the right systems, having the right behaviors in place. And I think Paul, who is going to speak about the American example, will illustrate how a program that is based on business excellence has been delivering some powerful outcomes internationally. And there are many other examples globally as well. Thank you, Cynthia.
Ravi, we do have one. I'm just going to address it with you now. I think there's a question mark that's come up on the Q&A about you've really demonstrated how the ABEF framework sits outside of the aged care standards and how the principles of the ABEF sit. And I think Romy covered where the ABEF sits in the broader framework. Peter's just flagged, how does this fit with ISO? So do you mind just covering that off now?
Yeah, of course. So the ISO standard provides a management system that's focused on quality principles. And those quality principles are effectively the foundation of any organization. So the framework, in fact, builds on ISO. So if you look at ISO 9001, which I assume what Peter is referring to primarily, it provides a benchmark, a foundation, a basis of a management system that ensures good governance. The framework then takes that and looks at other areas that continuously focus on improving outcomes to the stakeholders. So the biggest difference is, in my words, the ISO focuses on outputs, the framework focuses on outcomes, and REAL with a strong focus on stakeholders. And the two go hand in hand to actually deliver on the requirements of the aged care standard.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks, Ravi. And that's a great cue as we move now to Paul. So Paul, really looking forward to hearing your session and also acknowledging I had the great pleasure of addressing the Baldrige Conference in Baltimore way back in 2016. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. So over to you.
Very good. And Romy and Ravi, thank you for just kind of setting the table for the things that I'm going to be talking about. We're certainly in alignment on what we're talking about here. Just a little bit of a background on me, in addition to what Cynthia talked about. I've been involved in performance excellence for about 25 years. Most recently, always with Baldrige, but then also with European Quality Award. And I do quite a bit of work with the China Quality Award also. Like Ravi, I'm passionate about performance excellence and what we are able to do with these various models to drive improvement. And I want to reinforce something that Romy said about that it's not about the award. It's about becoming an organization that is deserving of the award. And that's what these different business excellence frameworks help you do, is compare yourself to what the criteria require, the frameworks require, holding yourself against those and finding those opportunities to make yourself better and better. So as I always tell my clients, my intent is not to help them win an award. My goal is to help them become an organization deserving of the award. What I'm going to be focused on today is primarily that role of a judge, examiner, trainer, and Baldrige expert for the ACA-NCAL Quality Award. ACA-NCAL is, as Cynthia said, the American Healthcare Association National Center for Assisted Living, which is quite a mouthful. But that is a membership organization in the US that is long-term care, both and we use the term long-term care as opposed to aged care, so forgive me for that, but focused on primarily what we call skilled nursing facilities and assisted living facilities and a few other smaller groups. But we see this program, this quality award, as being a benefit of the membership for these applicants to be able to participate in an award program that is very focused on development, as opposed to, for instance, the Baldrige Award has one level. You win the Baldrige Award or you don't. The ACA-NCAL program is open only to those skilled nursing and assisted living facilities, and it truly is developmental in nature, and I'll talk a little bit about those different levels. Next slide. This is one of the ways I position the framework for any organization, but it makes particular sense to those in the long-term care industry. Across the bottom is what I call threshold quality. It's regulatory quality. It's quality that's required to be, as I say, in the game, to have your doors open. Those are what I think of as the compliance requirements that say you have to meet these requirements. Now, meeting those requirements does not give you any sort of competitive advantage, because who else has to meet those competitive or those regulatory requirements? Everybody else. Now, when we talk about integrated management systems, Baldrige, the Australian Business Excellence Framework, all of those things are a never-ending quest for excellence, is what I call it, because you never get to the point where you say, just like with Six Sigma, yep, we are fully Six Sigma, or we are fully Baldrige. No, you are always, as Romy talked about, you identify strengths and you identify opportunities for improvement. And in the US, for the National Malcolm Baldrige Award, the organizations that are recognized by Baldrige as the role model organizations in the country have a set of strengths and a set of opportunities for improvement in every area. So it's a journey that you're on. And what's the benefit that comes out of there? Well, it's progress towards role model performance and competitive advantage that helps differentiate you versus your competitors in the eyes of those who are looking for, where do I want to receive care? Where do I want my mother and father to be? So it's setting yourself apart by demonstrating high performance. Next, please, Cynthia. This is, if you look at the left-hand side, is the Baldrige core values, which are very, very similar to the Australian Business Excellence Framework 9 principles of business excellence. This describes what high-performing organizations look like. As you see here, we talk about a systems perspective, visionary leadership, patient-focused excellence. These align very closely with those 9 principles of business excellence. Across the top are the Baldrige categories that are very similar to the Australian Business Excellence Framework. What this demonstrates is that as you make progress in these various areas in those categories, you are making progress towards becoming that organization represented by those principles of business excellence, those core values. The way I position this with organizations is when the board of directors wants to understand why you should be doing this. I share the core values. You could share the 9 principles of business excellence and say, this is what we aspire to. And by using this framework, we have a roadmap to become that kind of organization. It's a powerful system to be able to say, here's, well, the core values, the principles are the why of the journey. The criteria itself, the categories, are the how you're going to get there. Next, please, Cynthia. Now, let me talk a little bit about the ACA NCAL Quality Award Program. There are 3 levels, and as I mentioned earlier, it's a developmental program. Starting with the Bronze Award, which is, we have a preface to the Baldrige criteria over here called the organizational profile that essentially says, who is this organization and what's important to them? It's about a 6-page application, and it's in essence a very low bar to get people started in the program. They have to go through each of these steps. So once you are a recipient of the Bronze Award, you can then apply for the Silver Award. The Silver Award goes into more detail with the processes, the enablers that Ravi talked about, strategic planning, leadership, all of those things in a shortened version from what the Gold asks for. The Silver is a higher bar, but it's still a good performing organization can be a recipient of the Silver Award. So I would say it's a good organization. The Gold is a leap forward. You can see that the small number of Gold recipients. To be a Gold recipient, and we just had our judging process last week, so I'm right now very familiar with it. The Gold Award, you have to be able to demonstrate that you are a role model long-term care facility in the country. It's not just good to very good, it is role model. So that is based on the entire criteria. It's very similar to a regular Baldrige application, and we have had an organization move on from this to be a recipient of the Baldrige Award. We're looking right now at how do we help organizations move from that Silver to that Gold level, because Bronze to Silver is not that much of a difference. To be a Gold recipient, you really have to become a student of the criteria, and you will be implementing changes in your organization to achieve that. The whole process is intended as a development opportunity for the organization to become better. And one of the other side benefits of it is that leaders within those organizations that many times have moved up through possibly a nursing role into an administrator role are learning. It's almost like a mini MBA in learning how a business operates, strategic planning, leadership, understanding customer requirements, things like that. So that's what the award program is like. In 2020, in January, we had over 1,500 applications submitted that year for various levels of the program. It's declined during COVID because, frankly, there are other things that organizations are working on, but we're starting to see more organizations getting involved. We're now getting 500 to 600 applications a year and anticipating that's going to increase. I want to show this slide shows that there really is demonstrated high performance. We have an organization here called CMS that is a regulatory agency, but they provide to the public what are called 5-star ratings. And this is a way to allow people like me to go out to a website, put in a long-term care facility name and see how they're doing on their survey requirements, staffing, their quality metrics, and an overall rating. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars. 5 stars is the best. And you can see our gold and silver recipients, 38% of those are 5-star. What we're working on now is separating that silver and gold, because we know that the gold recipients are probably up in the 80% to 90% 5-star facilities. We're able to demonstrate higher performance from the participants in this program to the average of the country. To me, this is a very powerful slide to say, if you focus on the entire organization, which the Australia Business Excellence Framework does exactly that, as Romy described. So let's move on to the next one. Just to talk about the value to the applicants, it's an outside perspective. Applicants have to apply as a facility. If they're part of a large system, they all have to apply as individual facilities, and they get that outside perspective of experts from the long-term care industry and people who are also Baldrige examiners that may not have long-term care experience. It's a valuable perspective. They get a lot of learning from the feedback. I always like to talk about the strengths are the pat on the back to say, hey, nice job. And that's one of the differences from the compliance surveys is we tell you what you're doing well, pat on the back, and then the opportunities for improvement are, and here's what you can do to move to the next level of high performance. It's a great team building opportunity as they develop these applications. It helps organizations become stronger and more resilient by putting together what I call a management document that says, here's how we work. Kind of to what Ravi talked about with ISO, there's a focus on results, not just how do we do something, but is it driving the results we want? And frankly, with the different levels of recognition, there's that recognition and pride in the organization. Next slide. What I think are some ACA NCAL best practices is the developmental nature of the award program, development of the applicant facility and applicant leaders. As I said earlier, really kind of a mini MBA for the leaders of the organization. The rigor of the assessment and the judging process, we have to be so rigorous. We look for comment score alignment and consistency among feedback reports, because a system may be getting 10 applications back, and we want to be sure that there is consistency of those. Celebration of recipients at all levels. At the National ACA Conference, they recognize all the bronze, silver, and gold recipients. And I've got to tell you, these administrators probably get very little recognition. And here they are winning the bronze award, which, like I said, is relatively low bar, but there are 2,500 people in the audience at the conference. The lights are flashing, the music's playing, and they walk across the stage holding their award. And I'm convinced that when they walk off that stage, they're thinking, I'm going to go back to my facility and start putting together my silver application because I want my organization to get better. And you know what? This recognition is pretty nice. And they're able to demonstrate the value of the program to the applicants. As I demonstrated earlier, there are improved results that are coming out of this program. I always close my sections with this American football coach who was a coach back in the 60s. But this quote, "Perfection is unattainable, but if we chase it, we can catch excellence," really summarizes what a business excellence program is about. We're never going to get perfect and never have a pressure ulcer, never have a fall, but that's no reason to not work towards it. And this framework is what can help you make progress on that. Thank you.
Oh, Paul, you touched on so many relevant issues for the Australian context. So, for example, we are moving towards star ratings. So you beautifully helped connect why you would be doing this, and the side benefit being really demonstrating high performance. So really look forward to some discussion with you. And that's a great segue, and hopefully Claire is able to turn her camera on. We're going to shift now over to Claire Pearson, who is the CEO of Little Wings. And we've brought Claire in particularly because she's not an aged care provider, but she's been embracing the business excellence journey for her own organisation, which, Claire, it's just absolutely wonderful what organisation you lead and what you do. And so we're keen to hear a bit about your story.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. So as you heard, I'm the CEO at Little Wings. Little Wings is a small charity. We're based at Bankstown Airport and recently opened a second base at Newcastle. And what we do every day is we fly all around the state of New South Wales and the ACT, picking up seriously ill children and bringing them into Sydney and Newcastle to access life-saving medical treatment that just isn't available in their hometowns. So we work with 4 key partners across all domains of health, and we specialise in transporting children. One of the unique things about Little Wings, and really the magic of our organisation, is that we're a 90% volunteer-led organisation. So that means 100% of pilots, 100% of drivers, all our events crew, a lot of our admin donating their time to keep us in the air and on the road every single day. So it's a very special place to work. It means we all have the same goal, that is to deliver and support children that are unwell, but it can also be a bit of a minefield in terms of how do you herd those people and make sure that you have the structure in place. And also too, we're in a significant period of growth. We are lucky, we do own our aircraft, which you can see there on the slide. So they're all the same type of aircraft, a Baron, but they're of a different vintage. And we're not government funded. So we have to work very hard for every dollar, and we have to make sure that we're really economic in the way we spend our money. But with only 6 paid staff, and anyone who's worked in a not-for-profit will know, you wear multiple hats. And I feel like anywhere I'm going, I'm running. I feel sorry for the assessors that from ABE that have helped us, because they're constantly chasing me on email and phone because I'm like a mad person. But really this process was something I brought on for me as much as the organisation. As I said, we're in a period of significant growth that's been driven by demand, not necessarily a strategic pathway for growth. So prior to COVID, we were doing about 12 missions a week. We're now doing 40 missions a week, and we're getting demands from other states, requests for support. And so I wanted to make sure that we had the structure in place to ensure that we were sustainable, and to really make sure that I was able to channel my energy and time into key areas, because I tend to be a little bit all over the place trying to do it all. And I realized very quickly that if we're going to be sustainable and we're going to make sure we maintain our quality of service, we needed to have the tools in place and apply some time to focus on that. And the assessors were so incredible in helping me do that, slowing me down, making me focus. And it's just been an incredible tool. And I think that's really an important part. You know, often when we talk about any sort of audit or assessment, we have a really negative connotation a lot of the time. We think about what's going to go wrong, or we're going to be identified for not doing the right thing, when really we need to change that narrative and start talking about the fact that this is a tool to do better, to improve, to make sure that we have the structure and the support in place to look after not only our mission, but our people that are delivering that mission each and every day. And so that's been a process for me to change that narrative, but I'm really comfortable with that now. So I go into any sort of assessment or audit actually looking forward to it, thinking they're going to help me, yes, celebrate my strengths and the organization's strength, but really say to me, Claire, you and your team need to work on X, Y, and Z. And that's what this process did in a really user-friendly, easy to understand process. What I would say is we definitely did have some hesitation from the team. People don't like to participate in these things. And so there was a bit of work for me to do to make sure that narrative was consistent and the team were briefed. And, you know, even that was little things about just booking the days for the assessment early, or having the assessor come out and meet the team just to walk around, say hello, get familiar with our space. But also to making sure that I communicate that this wasn't a forced process. This was something that I wanted. This was something that was going to help us all and improve us all. So I think, yeah, having that language and that communication has been a really important part of making it successful and taking everyone on the journey. But I have to say that the assessors themselves were so lovely and so gentle with the team. So at times when they maybe become a little bit defensive, particularly sort of championing that we're excellent in what we do already, that they just reposition the question and just reassure the team that actually we're just here to help you. So if that's what's happening, tick. But if it's not, let's just unpack it a little bit together and think about, well, what else could we do? And so the actual tool that came out at the end has been easy to use. It's been practical, it's been really clear, and it's been an opportunity for our whole team to understand what it is their role is doing to help lead us to that ultimate excellence and to support growth into the future. So it's been an incredibly positive process for us, and one that we've been really privileged to partake in, really. You never know what it's going to look like when you embark on this process. It is demanding. It takes the team out for a few days, obviously, and you're trying to negotiate lots of moving parts in terms of, you know, engaging stakeholders to participate. But really, it's just been an opportunity for us to celebrate our strengths, because when you look at the report, actually it comes back with the first paragraph is about all your strengths. So right off the bat, when you read the report, the whole team's in a good headspace. And then it uses user-friendly language and really practical skills to outline what excellence could look like for you and how you might achieve them together. And I think it's really important too that they think about all stakeholders when they're talking in the report. So they brought in the board, they talked about myself as a CEO, they talked about all the people on the ground, including the volunteers and the challenges that come with that, to take everyone on the journey. So I couldn't recommend it enough. And I think it's for every industry, right? We all want to exceed standards. We all want to make sure that safety is upheld and that we're the best that we can be, whatever that looks like. And I think we just need to start investing in tools such as this to understand it at a fundamental level and to use it as a launching pad to move in that direction.
Claire, that was just absolutely fabulous. And what a great backdrop to hear from Business Excellence Australia, then hear from Paul to really get a grounding of how these principles are really driving an innovation agenda in the US, and then to come back to Claire as a really interesting, unique organisation that is embracing business excellence. So I'm now just moving away from having the slide deck and coming back to the panel so we can spend the last little bit of the webinar really talking. And the thing that first strikes me, Paul, is the benefit of graded assessment, and you showed the connection to the star ratings. I've been quite critical of the way the aged care standards are structured in Australia, not the standards themselves, but the way they're assessed is binary. You either meet them or you don't. And what Claire beautifully harnessed is why it's so important that for CEOs, boards and staff, there's a recognition of positivity, starting with the strengths. And I think any of our participants today, and I remind everyone that Q&A is available. So if you'd like to ask one of these fabulous panelists, please do that and I'll bring your questions forward. Paul, graded assessment. Do you want to just touch on that a little bit? And then I'm going to ask Romy to just come in behind you and talk a bit about how the business excellence evaluation process actually happens here in Australia. And Paul, just unmute.
Thank you. A couple things that developmental process that we use, you know, the idea of submitting or putting together a 55-page application, which is what the Gold Award is, that's pretty intimidating if you don't even understand some of the frankly complex language in the Baldrige criteria. The Bronze Award or the Bronze application process really helps them kind of dip their toe in it to say, okay, is this something we want to do? And we see a lot of movement from that bronze to silver because, you know, again, the recognition. There's also the fact that they are able to, once they win bronze and then silver and gold, have a little logo that they're able to put on their website to say we're a bronze recipient, a silver or a gold recipient, which helps with their marketing efforts. But the stage process is really, I think, so valuable to help them, again, kind of dip their toe in the water and see what this is like, get some recognition, recognize the value of the process, and then move forward with it.
Which
What was
is
the second
really-
part of your question, Cynthia?
Well, I actually think you touched on beautifully, because what Claire's
Good.
story showed was exactly that, really using it as the journey. So Romy, for you, the Business Excellence Australia obviously conducts these evaluations and assessments. So do you want to just touch a little bit on that in case our participants are kind of whet their appetite to better understand, and how do they get the Business Excellence Framework?
Yes, thank you, Cynthia. There are probably a couple of ways that I would suggest. One is you can go directly to our website, businessexcellenceaustralia.org.au, and apply for an award online, and you will have a form to fill out, and that'll come to me or our awards manager, and they will get in contact with you. And then there's forms to fill in, of course, and agreements to sign. And then we give you the outline of what is required. You have to provide an enormous amount of information. And then we do what's called a desktop evaluation. And the panel of evaluators will be allocated to you at the beginning, and they stay the same. And they might ask for some more information. And then during COVID, we had no site evaluations, but they're beginning to happen a little bit. So there can be a site evaluation, and that is to meet the leadership team, meet the people, and ask questions. And then the desktop evaluation is then agreed by the evaluators, and each aspect of each category is scored against a certain matrix. And then your scoring will be added up to see where you fitted in to the criteria for an award. So it's a very friendly process, as Claire said. Or the other way people do is just ring us up and ask to talk about an award, and then we can come and meet you or talk about it but then the process goes back to the formal process.
That's great. Thank you for that background.
Cynthia, could I
go for it.
build on something there? What Romy talked about the score, what I tell organizations is, the score helps determine if you're going to get an award, but this is the way that you can measure your performance excellence maturity over time. And, it's different than what the scores you would get in school. But you're able to say, here's where we are now. And then when you submit again, you're able to see that progress that you're making. And what Claire said about the assessment process, it's so different from those compliance surveys where employees are scared that they're going to say something wrong. I've had clients who, at the end of a site visit, they've said, that wasn't so bad, and we actually kind of enjoyed it, because it does tend to be much more collaborative than trying to catch you at doing something wrong.
Yeah,
Claire,
and
that's a great story.
It is. And I've experienced, like Claire, that evaluation. I had the good fortune of leading an organisation through a silver and then 2 golds. And that was exactly the ethos, the team and the uplift, and that strengths-based approach is very different to the compliance lens. Now, I know, Ravi, you've been having a couple of issues with your technology. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I mean, you obviously, Ravi, you bring that international lens, and I know you're embedded in working in the aged care sector, just like myself. What do you see as being the real benefit for providers in this country to embrace, on top of already their very onerous compliance obligations with the aged care standards? Why would you say, hey, lean into business excellence?
I think the biggest benefit, Cynthia, I feel, is that framework provides an umbrella to integrate all the different requirements aged care providers in Australia or overseas need to meet. And it gives them a way to actually achieve what the government, funders, stakeholders, regulators expect of their organizations, simply by having the right systems in place and the right behaviors in place, which is what the framework is there to guide you. So it's not a quick fix, but over time, I think by using the framework, aged care providers can really achieve not just the requirements, but exceed expectations. And as Paul said, it's also about competitiveness, because it is a competitive market in aged care nowadays, and it really helps your organization to stand out.
Thanks, Ravi. And that issue of sustainability, I think, is particularly poignant for aged care providers in Australia. I mean, we literally heard our Minister for Aged Care just announcing this week that in the reform agenda, there will be some real injection as we come towards October to address one of those critical issues, which is staff wages. And I know we've kind of come to the end of our webinar, really touching on why business excellence really helps with staff engagement. Romy, do you want to add to that?
I was just going to read to the person who asked about ISO compliance from one of our award winners who has to comply with many different programs. The pursuit of ISO compliance and other mandatory regulatory bodies and business excellence are interconnected, synergistic, and will lead to common approaches for progress and sustainability. That was
thanks, Romy. That's absolutely at the heart of using the business excellence framework. So if we come to an end, maybe I can open up to the panel. Paul, how do you see the connection of using business excellence? This labour market, if I use those terms, everywhere around the globe, there are challenges for attracting and retaining talent. You know, do you see a connection of using business excellences in that competitive space?
I absolutely do. And, you know, similar to the 9 principles of business excellence in Australia, we have a core value of valuing people. And I'll just read a sentence from it. It says, an organization's success depends on an engaged workforce that benefits from meaningful work, clear organizational direction, the opportunity to learn, and accountability for performance. By becoming an organization that values their employees and does the things that engage them in the work that they do, they're in the long-term care industry here in the United States, our turnover rates have been extremely high. One of our gold award recipients has turnover of 6%.
Wow.
Okay, and that is in a suburb of Chicago, where I promise you that people are driving past other facilities to work there. You want to be that facility of choice, and this process helps you analyze yourself, your employees, to understand what that's going to be. And let's face it, reducing turnover is reducing the cost of operations.
And Claire, that's a great segue for you. I mean, obviously you've got the same pressures as any organisation. You operate in a really unique space. And what's been the benefit from your perspective on staff engagement, retention, you know, that important value proposition?
Yeah, I think, like Paul said, you know, if you want your staff to really operate at an optimum level, you need to be really clear about what the goals are and how we're all going to achieve them. We all have, no one role is more important than another. So we need to make sure that we have really clear and distinct boundaries and expectations around each role and give people the freedom to achieve that within their means. And doing this process allowed us to really crack that open and to talk about really honestly about, okay, what does success actually look like for you? And give people that accountability. I think people want to thrive and they want to do a good job, you know, but you have to have the tools that lay that foundation and set those boundaries first and be really clear what success will look like. And so that's what we've been able to do, to talk about openly at every meeting, at every week, about what people are doing, how that's ultimately leading to excellence and our goals each and every year.
Oh, look, that's been a fabulous session. We're a couple of minutes over, but if our participants feel like I do, I've been absolutely, completely enthralled by hearing from all of you. On behalf of Anchor Excellence, I'm really pleased that we've been able to help bring this special session together. Romy, thank you so much as the CEO of Business Excellence Australia. We just encourage people to reach out to you so that they can start engaging in a dialogue of business excellence. And of course, Ravi, I'm sorry you've had a few technical issues, but it's an absolute pleasure to have heard from you. Paul, good evening in the US. Have a great evening. And thank you so much for sharing. It really is the bar from my perspective in terms of where I would personally love to see how business excellence is used here in Australia to really stimulate this industry that I'm absolutely personally and professionally committed to. And Claire, thank you so much for sharing the Little Wings story. It truly is just absolutely outstanding. And I'll go to you, Romy, as we close.
And thank you, Cynthia, very much for working with us to put this on. It's been fantastic working with you. And I look forward to hearing from anybody who would like to pursue this further. Thank you again, everybody, for being here today.
And thank you for the kind comments on our Q&A. Colin, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Have a great day. We look forward to bringing you future sessions on stimulating thought leadership in the industry. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.